Hello, part 2 of Let's Waffle, round 10. Now John, we'd like to go around the league and visit the different clubs. Where are we today for Let's Waffle?
Well, isn't it number 33?
The George Giannakis gazebo we're in today. We've got some of our own decorations though, but it's good to get around.
It's better than the old place we had, isn't it?
It is.
Slightly more salubrious.
Looks like I don't have horns coming out of my head. Now, in the gazebo, we're talking about the state game now. WA versus Queensland next month down at Bendigo Bank Stadium. We've had a provisional state team announced. Fair few West Perthies in there, John. But
well, they're flying, so they deserve it. One very unlucky to miss out, I reckon, Dustin Burns, their back pocket, who I saw towel up Lewis Broom only a couple of weeks ago, and he's their reigning best and fairest winner, and he could well be leading it again this year, though Brent Lecar has been outstanding and Mark Hutchings has been very good. But Dustin Burns, I'm sure he'll be looked at closer to the event.
Seven Swan Districts players too.
Yeah, that is a bit of a
3-6 record for Swans this season.
Yeah, that's a bit of a surprise. I think Ames has been very good. Hanson, probably no surprise, is a big power forward. Josh Roberts, who I guess is the front runner to be captain, though West Perth would love to see Jason Salisic in that job.
Do you think the coach might help Josh Roberts' case?
Of course, it would certainly help Graham Jett's case. I don't think that Graham Jetta would have had a look in, but though he was very good last year, he was outstanding in the grand final, and he was one of the most improved players in the WAFL. So, based on that, Graham Jetta deserves to be there. Tom Roach is an automatic, I think, for his line breaking. Yeah, 7's a fair bit, but reigning premiers, I suppose you give them the first chance. And this isn't the final squad either. This is the preliminary squad. They'll start training this week, and then they'll have ins and outs every week as we go on.
Can't remember the last time that Subiaco only produced 2 players in a provisional state squad, Ricks and Blake Broadhurst. There are only 2 inclusions. Ricks you would think would play. Oh,
you'd think that Broadhurst would as well. He was back into his best form on the weekend, and he was instrumental in them beating Swan Districts. Yeah, I remember the last time we played Queensland, there were 10 Subiaco players in the team, and they were flying. That was the year they only lost 1 game, and that was by a point. They were flying, and they had a lot of players in there. I guess that when you got the state coach, he has seen his players a lot, so that's, without saying there's any skullduggery or whatever, he's seen the best of a lot of his local players, and I guess the same with Brian Dawson. He's seen a lot of those those Swans players, and that's why he's keen to have them in there. We'll wait and see what the final lineup looks like.
What's the ruling, John, just to clarify for everybody? AFL players, only AFL rookie listed players are available?
Yeah, and Lewis Broom's been named, but I think on his form in the last few weeks he will struggle to get into the state side, and he's going to battle to hold on to his league spot, I would have thought. So,
would you envisage that the Queensland side will have a fair few Gold Coast Suns?
Yes, and not only that, they're taking from the North East AFL, so Andrew McLeod and Jason Rowe are prospect or eligible to be selected. Whether they are or not remains to be seen. Matt Angus, who was a Claremont Colts coach not that long ago, is involved in that competition. A few of his players are flying as well. You'd love to see McLeod play. It would give the game a fair bit of zing, but whether they actually want to pick one or whether they're going to select players who are pushing up maybe for higher honours might be the issue. Should be a good game though. Queensland in Mandurah, that's one area where I don't think the crowds are going to be huge. Now,
one of your assignments this year is obviously to do the hot dog tasting at every venue around the ground, but you went down to Bendigo Bank Stadium to spy on the facility down there and see how it's travelling with the lead up to the state game, and did you get a seat?
I certainly got a seat. It was a very small seat. It was in a demountable, and there wasn't much room. But that's the end of the demountables at Ruston Park, and the massive pylon that sits directly in front of it. I think the next game, the pre-match entertainment and president's function, all those sort of things will be moved along, and coaches' boxes will go into the big new stand that looks magnificent. And
in terms of a WAFL venue, there's a lot of people who don't go down to Mandurah very often for the WAFL matches. That's evident by the crowds. Can you give us some description and some comparison as to what it might be like?
It's a small stand. It wouldn't seat 1,000 people, I wouldn't have thought.
Is it a bit like Joondalup?
Yeah, it's very similar setup to Joondalup, with that sort of tall central stand, and then the rooms under it are a bit bigger than the Joondalup rooms, I gather. And then there's a smallish outer. It doesn't have the big wide banks as Joondalup does, and the cars are still in there, which is interesting.
I thought they might have built a car park for them.
And, well, they do have several, but they're very small. So and it's always nice to get in and honk when your home team scores a goal.
Yeah, nothing like a good honk at a game of footy.
Yes, I didn't get to try the hot dog, Ross.
I was going to say, can you have a honk and a hot dog?
Well, you can simultaneously. It's a bit harder. No, I left a bit late. I didn't leave until about 11:30, so I wasn't there in time for a hot dog. But I'm sure they've got very nice ones there. They've got a nice little can bar there as well.
Zach Beck moving along, a former Peel player, a former East Perth player, a former Peel player, and a former East Perth player.
And
Did
a
I get that
player,
right?
yeah,
and a West Coast Eagles player.
Yeah, he's moved on. Work commitments. He's now working in car leasing, I think, and a pretty competitive field, and he's required to work midweek, and basically East Perth said to him, you're either in or you're out. If you're not going to train, you can't play, and he couldn't commit to training, and so that's the end of that. But there's a couple of clubs that are keen, and certainly Claremont and Perth are looking at him, and I gather that Swans might as well, though Zach Beck told me this week that he'd spoken to Perth and Claremont but no one else. He's still weighing up whether he actually wants to play, one, whether he wants to play football, and two, whether he'll be available. And he's
How does Claremont fit these people in?
well, they've got a points of about 82 and well under the salary cap, because they've got a lot of players who are happy to play for $1 or $2 or a burger voucher, and you know, for the glory, obviously.
What about the AFL listed players that play for
Well, they don't play. Well, they don't get paid by Claremont, so
No,
there's a deemed amount, obviously.
And obviously there's a $300 bill in the salary cap though, but what about the points? How many points is an AFL player worth?
0.
Mm.
So that if you've got 10 players, your points are well down, and yeah, they're all local players, and a lot of that's clearly one of Claremont's advantages, that they've got a good number of players on their list who are in the AFL system, so they don't cost them anything points wise. If they come off though, there's a bit of an issue, because then they're a bit top heavy, and got to find a bit of dough to, if you say Andrew Foster came off the AFL list last year, and he went to Claremont, so they've had to use 10 points and find $1 or $2 for him to play the game.
Earning more at Claremont than he is at
yes, I saw that. That was written recently, that earning more at Claremont this year than he did in a year at
so Andrew
when he was
Foster's
at
the
Fremantle.
highest paid player in the WAFL, is he?
I wouldn't have thought so, Ross. I don't think he's even close to that level.
Just trying to think. 200,000 divided by 50.
No, don't start with 200,000.
Hang on, can I take my shoes off here, because I'm going to need to start counting.
No, don't. That's the error that a lot of people make. They presume that the salary cap starts at 210,000.
Well, it starts at 210, goes on from there.
Yes, anyway, so we'll wait and see what happens to Zach Beck. I'm sure he'll field a few offers, and I'm sure he will, from country teams as well. Now, whether or not he can, you'd think if he's been moved on from one club because he can't train, that it's going to be hard for him to go to another club, that particularly if his training commitments don't change all that much.
I will bring up one thing about Claremont, John. I do like reading the AFL Watch on the Monday morning in the paper, even though we're online these days. We do have to look at the paper from time to time. Tom Swift's
Apparently he tried hard.
I should say.
He tried hard.
His mention in the Player Watch was exactly that, those two words, tried hard.
Yeah, I don't know what that means, whether he got 35 touches or 2 and had a lot of shepherds or whatever.
Do we read more into that? Can those two words mean more?
One thing you would be disappointed about is an AFL player who's on the fringe of playing in his AFL club. If he didn't try hard, you'd be fractionally disappointed, I reckon. So, yeah, maybe didn't quite tell us as much as we might have found out about it.
I think it may have said a lot more. Week 10, or should I say round 10, got to keep up to date with the bye on the WAFL Premiership ladder. It tosses everything around. Subi versus Peel is our first game, Medibank Stadium. Can I get a tip? And
Subi will win that. They've got a book launch this week, the third instalment of Ken Spillman's, well, it's a trilogy now, on the, is it? Or it might be a quadruped. Has he written 3 already? It's the latest decade of the Lions, their 4 flags in the last decade. So they're launching that before the game, and I think Subi will demolish Peel, who are trying hard but are certainly far outclassed by most of the other sides.
Yep, I'm going to go with Subi, who are doing a wonderful job with their social media at the moment, John. Been a terrific amount of work there. East Fremantle versus Swan Districts is next at East Fremantle Oval. Not a bad game of footy this one.
Yeah, cracking game. Swans, a lot of emotion, I guess, in that game up at Bassendean against Subi, and that perhaps explains why they sort of ran out of puff towards the end of the game after the Luke Adams matter. understandably perhaps that they found it hard to maintain their intensity all the way. And East Fremantle just going beautifully. And if they've got Jonathan Griffin back there, as they may well do, he's a dominant player at the WAFL. He was instrumental in them beating Claremont, and I think that East Freo will just go nicely and will knock them off.
Yep, same reasons for me. I'm sticking with the Sharks. Next game is South Fremantle versus Claremont at East Fremantle Oval. Sorry, at Fremantle Oval.
Yep. Yeah, South coming off the bye. They've been absolutely massacred by injuries. And Claremont, who'll get Brett Jones back, might get Andrew Brown back, might get Andrew Foster back, and I reckon will be savage on the track this week. They have been ordinary for a month. I reckon they beat Perth pretty comfortably, but they were very ordinary against West Perth. They were lucky against East Perth. They had their moments against Subi. They were poor against East Freo, and I reckon that there might be a sort of a week where the coach says bring your mouth guards to training.
Sunday fixture this week. Do we know why?
No.
Medibank Stadium, East Perth versus Perth.
East Perth on the way up, Perth on the way down, and I think East Perth will do it well. And we've talked about them a bit, those blokes that they brought in, Pettifer, Polak and Josh Smith. They were all outstanding on Saturday. Gary Moss is another one who's came in. He was very good as well. And their top echelon players are just starting to hit their peak, I reckon, East Perth. And they're going to, whether they can make the four or not, I don't know.
Well, they can. I mean, if you look, if they win this
mathematically,
game,
they can.
They're on the cusp of the top four, and their season almost starts.
As I said at the start, though, the competition is so even that you can't. It'd be very difficult to see a club having apart from West Perth who are flying, but a lower club having 7 or 8 wins in a row as East Perth did last year. You never know. They keep playing as they did on Saturday. They'll go close and they'll win this one comfortably.
The bye is West Perth. I'm just looking at West Perth. They've won 8 straight. They're only 3 wins away from guaranteeing a place in the 4, aren't they? I mean, they're now looking at well and truly entrenching themselves in the top 2 finish.
They were only 1 win away from their best ever start to a season, and only 3, I think, away from the best start by. It can't be the best start because East Freo went through a season undefeated, so they're a long way off the best start ever. I went to a West Perth function last week too. Graham Campbell back in town, the 75 premiership coach, and it was an outstanding event actually. Trevor Jenkins did it. I've had the curious pleasure, I guess, of working on air with Trevor Jenkins, but he knew every player. There was 30 former players there. He named 25 of them and provided an anecdote. They were all squirming in their seats actually, but I think what happens in 1975 you probably get away with now.
Should stay in 1975, shouldn't it?
Yes, but it was an outstanding lunch. Graham Campbell spoke brilliantly for an hour and a half. I didn't hear all of it because one of our mates, Scott Ballum, was in my ear for a little while, but it was very good. And I mean, one thing West Perth do, they organise their social side brilliantly. Their heritage, I mean, Brett Raponi's he's a passionate president, comes from that obviously, very passionate about what they're doing and where they've come from and their club colours and their club name and all those sort of things, as you see with West Perth playing at Joondalup and still called West Perth. It was a great event. It was a great event.
Not for much longer.
I think the sooner they go and become the Joondalup Cardinals, the better it is for everyone.
That's round 10. Let's waffle. We'll leave you on that highly controversial note, and if you see Jonathan football, maybe you can give your opinion on whether they should be the Joondalup Cardinals. Thanks for watching and listening. We'll be back next week with all the big waffle action, but stay tuned to thewest.com.au for all your waffle news.